Again, welcome everyone to our monthly, we've taken a break for the last few months over the end of the year and the beginning of this year. And we're returning back now to monthly webinars here at America's Walking Club National webinars, trying to bring you relevant topics for all the clubs and all walkers all across our great country. And we have some really fun things to talk about. Some significant changes tonight to our internet presence. And one of our master gurus of the internet, Mike Green, coming to you from the Keystone State. Mike, thank you so very much for being with us. Again, everyone, we're going to keep videos off, microphones off, and please use the chat room for your questions. Mike, thanks so much for being with us, and share capability is enabled, sir.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to actually share my screen. And hopefully you're seeing my screen. So everyone's seeing the screen here?
Yes, we are. It's there.
As I mentioned to Tim earlier in the presentation, at some point I will do a live demo of the new site, and I would request that you don't try to log in and follow along by clicking, because in principle it could slow down my response to actually doing the demo. I just don't know what the bandwidth limits are on that side. So, but what I'm going to start out with is just to kind of help you understand the difference between what we call the legacy system was able to support for event creation, editing, and approval, how that worked, and then contrast that against what we put on what we're now calling the new ESR. It's the ability to edit, create, and submit for approval and approve an event such that it becomes publicly viewable to the system. So hopefully you're all seeing this diagram that I created that shows how the legacy system event flow worked. You would go in and decide to enter event. Let's say, for example, you would enter the required information. You would then submit it. Everything in blue are actions that are required by you to as a club or a person acting as the manager for that club. That data goes into what we would call on the legacy system, and actually on the new system also, the event table. And then it's only made publicly viewable if it's approved. So when you first submit it, it's not approved. So then it drops into the approval list for that RD or SA. How I use SA to specify state association. So for those regions that do have state associations that do approve events, there are some regions that have state associations that don't approve events, but for those that do, then the state association would have to approve before the RD would then be able to approve, and then once his approval went through, then the event that you submitted would be publicly viewable. This had a lot of limitations. For example, if you wanted to change the, once it's been approved, if you wanted to change the date, the start or end date, the city or even the state of that event, you could not do that. The RD could after approval. But you literally had to communicate that to the RD by, over via mail or call them up or something. And so that was one limitation there. If you manage to submit your event late, late meaning that with less than 60 days away, even the RD was not allowed to approve it. He had to call up headquarters, the AVA national office, and typically Hector, and he would be the one that would approve the event, and then he would indicate whether or not he thought he could get a stamp out in time, because 60 days is kind of our threshold to which we would guarantee getting a stamp. If you submit an event and it gets approved with less than 60 days ago, there is a small chance that it might not appear promptly in time for your event. And then the other thing you had to do was we had these other new, what we called my.ava.org feature. So you had what it took some time, maybe as much as 30 hours for this new event to be put on the legacy server. And in fact, I don't show that here because this publicly viewable means that it has been synced to the legacy server, because it's actually going, not, excuse me, to the my.ava.org server. This event table existed, a copy of it existed on the my.ava.org server. It got synchronized sometimes quickly, sometimes not quickly, but guaranteed to be there 30 hours. Once that event appeared there, then you were allowed to enter special programs, use all the new sell it features, which was add an elevator pitch and other features. And so that was kind of split up for the moment. And then the other thing that was enforced on the legacy system had to do with traveling guided walks. There's a policy issue that your first traveling guided walk could not be approved until you had at least one non-traveling guided event walk approved in that same calendar year. It didn't have to be before or after, it just had to be approved before the new traveling guided walk could be approved. So this, so again, the brown is something that the RD does. If you wish, the black things here are all system level type things going on, and the blue things are what you have to do. So we're going to compare that to what is going on in the new ESR. And I got to knock this resolution down to at least that, maybe even more. Yeah. So this is what's going on the new ESR. When you enter an event, you go you actually do go through a thing called save review, and that puts it in the buffer table. But if it doesn't have the required info, you're punched back to this state basically. So there's a little bit of check to see how much, whether you have the required info, and that's a little bit more than what's been required when you first create an event on the legacy system. And I will go through what's now required. It's not that bad, as it turns out. And I will actually create a new event, and we'll see what happens when you don't submit enough data, and then what happens when you do. When you've submitted enough data and finally got that approved, or got through this step, it goes down and it does this event need to be approved? And that's because it goes through the same loop if you're editing an event which has already been approved. And so if you've not changed enough things, then you can basically go publish. And again, what does approval needed? Well, if it's a new event, it's got to be approved. So it goes through here and you have to press a button called request approval, and that'll be your only option if it needs that. If you've changed on an approved event, if you change the event date, city or state, it has to be RD approved. If it's just a trivial change, you change the event name, some text, anything but the date, so the city or state, then what's offered up is a publish button. And by clicking on that publish button, that's when it goes to the event table, and that's when it becomes viewable on the current system, and it becomes immediately viewable. There's no sync that's required, because this entire process, if you wish, resides on the my.ava.org server. And it turns out that we later sync some fraction of this information to allow us to support participation of the legacy server, but that's not too important at this moment. Again, the request approval, actually both the state, if the approving state association and RD see it, we still require the state association to approve, with one exception. The RD can override the state association if he so chooses. If he tries to approve an event that requires state association approval, a message will pop up and he will have to confirm that he's going to override that. And RDs, be aware, if you do that, that we do record who approves things in the history of the database. So, we'll know if you override the state association. You should have a good reason for overriding them. I mean, they're there to help keep some chaos from happening when people worry about interfering events, and they presumably have all that information. So again, the blue stuff here is something that literally correspond to things in this new interface. And we have something called the buffer table, which is where the data is stored while you're trying to get through this phase, and maybe even while it's waiting for approval. We're even allowed to edit something while it's waiting for approval. It's absolutely allowed. But at some point it gets approved, and then you still can edit it. But if you change these things, it requires more approval. If you don't change anything else, then you just hit the publish button and it goes out to the event table. So having this, so it looks more complicated, but having this buffer table enables a lot more features for the new ESR. And I'm just going to, I think I'm going to look at my notes here to make sure. Let's see. So there's an ability to copy events from previous events. So you can start that, take that copy and get it in a mode where you can edit it. You can clone an event that you're currently editing, and you can resurrect a past YRE. And again, even the copying is any past event. And so without much more ado here, I would like to actually actively demo this first by creating a new event.
Mike, we do have a question about what are the required elements, but I suspect you're about to tell us. So
that's correct. The required elements will become clear. And so I'm going to try to avoid, I'm going to be using a special account called Olive Green. It's a fake account, but it has some capabilities. And I've given it the privileges of an Atlantic Region Director for the moment. Whether we'll use those, I don't know. And she is also a manager for the Princeton area walkers and a manager for the Garden State Wanderers. And the Garden State Wanderers, unfortunately, is a very inactive club. And so I'm going to use this club to create an event. Notice now when you go to your home page, let me increase the, is that big enough? That you now learn a little bit more that there are more functionality been added. The participation's actually been there for a few weeks now, but now all your participation goes through the participation tab. I can click on that. And you see, this is where this button will change when we go to 22Q1. So you can enter it. You can enter your TE participation. And even as in the past, you would enter ACE-WG participation. You can create reports of a past participation in this under this tab. The other thing you can do is do your insurance requests, and you have to click on the sanctions tab and then the insurance tab. And this club has no active events, so can't show much there. I'll come back and show you something like that for an event. So, okay. And then the new ESR tells you how to get to creating a new event and the fact that there's a lovely help button. So let's just do that. So I'm going to click on Edit New. And you'll see these broad lines across here that correspond to different areas when you are actively working on an event where things will appear. That should become clear. Please also note the help, lovely description of all the features here that maybe sometimes do a better job than I'm doing for you right now. But what we're going to do is just start from fresh. We're going to start with a brand new event. And here it's reminding you that we do not have kind of a save feature, but if you don't enter something every 15 minutes or so, it can be possible that you get logged out and you lose what you've done. So use save review. As soon as you hit save review, even if you haven't entered all the data, it gets saved, right? So I'm going to create, so what we have is a series of what we call sanctioning tiles. The idea is to click on each tile as we enter the data. So it allows you to quickly, and you'll learn fairly quickly what each one of these corresponds to. On the basics tile for sanctioning, you got to select whether it's going to be a traditional event. It assumes that since my club is in New Jersey, that it is in New Jersey, but you know, I could sanction an event in New York if I wanted to. It's perfectly legal, but I'm going to continue with New Jersey. And I have to enter the location. And I'm going to create an event in Wildwood, New Jersey. And it's going to be, even though I don't have to enter a name for this event, I had to enter the event Walk on the Wild Side for this guy. And it's going to be in 2022. And I'm going to make that event out here in August. It's going to be a hot one. And I'm going to make it for 1 day. So I'm clicking along here, as you see, and now I got to decide what kind of event it's going to be. I have to select something, walk, and that's all I have to select. I don't have to tell, guided, night, traveling guided. I don't have to say a award at the moment, and so I won't, okay? The next thing, you do have to enter POC information, and if you have it nicely stored away here, let's see, this is going to pop up nicely. Yes, there it is. If your browser's remembering things, it will not nicely pop in. Otherwise, you got to enter it all by hand. It's not noticed that even when I click on a tile, it has not been saved yet. The next thing I got to do is declare what type of walk this is going to be. It's going to be a 1A. It's going to be a boardwalk walk, and I got to give it at least one distance. Notice here that I can specify multiple distances. I could declare a 5, and I could declare my 10 to be a 2. I probably, if I'm going to do that, that's a 2B, for example, and put a rating on that, and then do a 1A here, for example. I could do that. Okay. And the other thing that you have to do is enter what we call the amenities stuff. So it's got restrooms. Typically, you're not allowed pets on a boardwalk. Some do, I guess. Should be easy for strollers and wheelchairs, but I have to click something for all cases. That's part of the required information. Okay. Next is location. You don't have to enter the start name, but you do have to enter a county. Now that's something new, right? And turns out that Cape May County in New Jersey is the county. And I do have to enter my start times. And rather than type it in, I'll just paste in something, but it's going to be, it's what it's going to be. And the other thing that I got to do, and we're trying to improve this feature a bit more, is drag that start pin to the location of the walk. And I've rehearsed this a little bit, so I kind of know where it goes, but turns out that Wildwood is right close to the very tip of New Jersey. So if I click down on there, you can see here, it's really down in this area right here. I can keep clicking, and there is Wildwood right in about that area. And I know where I'm going to start this walk is at the Adventurer Inn. So that's my final thing, and I'll make it a little bit more accurate. That step is required because that's how we're going to map your walk now. From now on the legacy system, everything was done by city state, and so the pin wasn't accurate. This is physically where my walk is going to start for this particular walk. The other thing you need to do is required is at least to put in some kind of event start address. And actually, we just checked to see if you got text in here. And you should really put in driving directions to get to the starting point. You don't have to put in a spoken phrase. Everything where it's not required is indicated as optional. You could specify a remote event start if you've got such a thing. That happens sometimes with YREs. But that's the next thing. The next thing is the description. There's nothing here that you have to enter into here. You should enter a sales pitch. You don't have to. You should probably use a web address, but you don't have to. And you should probably have an event information and event comments. But again, it's not required. The next required step is to put in information about your stamp. And so I'm going to copy what it has here, the walk on the wild side, Wildwood, New Jersey. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to take a look at the image and see. It's a little long, but I found out if I just do this, then I can fit all those characters. So walk on the wild soil, Wildwood, New Jersey. It's going to be is what's going to be on my stamp. Okay, I do a save review. And because I got all of my required elements in place, I get some warnings, but I don't get anything else. So this is what I'm reviewing. Notice these little change bars. This is, again, showing data that I've entered. The fact that it's in New Jersey, that's my event name, the fact it's a traditional walk, the starting, everything is highlighted here, right? Okay, so let's say that so now I'm ready to actually request for approval. And I'm going to actually go back to the list for a moment so you can see how this event appears. So this is now sitting what we call in the buffer. It still needs to be approval requested, right? So what we want to do is if we decide we're done editing on this event, we would go back to review, and then I can request approval. But I'm not going to quite do that. I want to show you what happens when you haven't entered a required field. So we're going to go back into edit, and I'm going to go back into location, and I'm going to delete that. Now I'm going to save this. There you have items with errors, right? That's the indication you're going to get. And here it has a little red marker. It says you've taken that out. There's nothing here. And so it will not show you the approve button until you've addressed that problem. Now, sure enough, you can say TBD, and we'll accept it, but that's not the idea. Now it'll let you, you put in TBD. Well, all right, I guess so. Your RD can make the decision. At least we tried to get you to do the right thing. So that's the way it stands. Now you can do a request for approval. And now it'll show you this event is sitting in the buffer waiting for RD approval. And sure enough, you can edit it until in fact, you can edit it after he approves it also. But you can edit that, and I can show you in his environment, in your RD, he or she's environment, what pops up. And if you want, we could take a look at that. But what I would, and maybe I will if we have time. So the other features I wanted to show you was to create a new event from a previous event. So I can click on that. And notice it says this club hasn't created an event, but notice I have all these years I can look through. And the last time they created an event is back in 2019. Pretty sad, huh? So we can actually copy that event. It was in Hamilton, New Jersey. And here it shows me Hamilton, New Jersey. And what I want to do is go to the basics and take a look at it, because clearly I have to reset the time here. I got to tell what year and what time. It could be a year round, but I could decide to make this a traditional event. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this a traditional event. I've copied a year round. I'm going to make a traditional event out of it. I'm going to do something where I'm going to make it, show you what else would happen here. I'm going to make it real soon, right? We're going to make it next, a couple weeks away, and show you how that works. Okay. And so everything else is selected nicely. We will have to, because this is an old event guaranteed, they don't have the county set. We need to set the county, and I think it's Middlesex. Doesn't matter. We're going to delete it eventually anyway. But I'm going to have to set this pin to the appropriate location. This turns out to be pretty close. Where that event, let's just say we're going to start it here for lack of a better choice. And let's back it out a little bit. Let's start it at this point right here. Okay. And the other thing we have to enter, well, see, he's got this information here. It probably doesn't correspond properly. I better just put in TBD here for the moment. And then the other thing I'm going to have to do is, I know we don't have to enter any description. I should probably check it, because I did inherit the description from the other event here. So I probably need to fix that, but I'm not going to do that right now. But one thing I do need to do is set up the stamp. Now, it did come up default Hamilton, New Jersey, because I hadn't put a thing in. I can prove that looks properly on my stamp. And obviously I'd want to select some special programs and things like that. Now let's save review that. And again, it's all ready to go. I can request approval. Let's do that. And notice again that the date is April 30th, definitely under the 60-day limit. When I request approval, I get a warning. Guess what? You're submitting a date that's less than 60 days away. You may not receive a rubber stamp in time for your event unless you request and pay for an emergency stamp. Pay for, sometimes not, but certainly there has to maybe have to be additional effort depending on, like this one, it's very close. And so somebody's going to have to probably cut a stamp separate for this if you're going to get it, or you can just use one of the cut and paste stamps, the new cut and paste feature for stamps that we've supported now for the last 6 months. So you can say, it's okay, or I can just cancel. I can just say, no, I better change that date. And so how do I change that date? I go into edit, go to the basics tile, and I'm going to move it out because I want a stamp. I'm going to make it June for 1 day. And again, I can do a save review. And it's ready to go, ready to be request approval, or I can just go back to the list. If I go back to the list, I can see it hasn't been submitted because the RD approval is not pending. The other thing I can do is something called a clone. This is valuable for people who are doing multiple events, like over a walking weekend. I can do what's called a clone, and I can select to say, create a copy of my Hamilton, New Jersey event. And I can make 2 or 3 copies. I can make 3 copies of this thing and work on them to say, make one of them a bike, one of them a swim, for example. So now I have the original Hamilton event, Hamilton 2, Hamilton 3. I can go in and edit, and I'm going to make that one a bike. Save it. So it's got all the same information that the original, and I'm going to change that one because I'm going to call this, the bike event. Really didn't even have to have a name. Okay, and we'll go back to the list. And now I have a biking event right there, right? And oh gee, maybe I shouldn't have made that many of them because I'm not going to have a 4th. I'm going to delete that one, all right? So I didn't need number 4. Now I will edit the number 3 here. I'm going to make that a swim event. Has all the same information, and save and review. There it is. And oh, I didn't change the name, but that's okay. I'll edit it. No name for the moment. Anyway, you can see that the stamp adjusts appropriately for the swim event. You got the little swimmer on your stamp, and you have a person here. The other thing is the POC. Notice I copied a bit early. The POC was inherited from the original event. This is Vasily. He's a very inactive guy. Probably should have, before I copied, I probably should have chosen a better POC for that. But this is, you see, I actually picked up the POC information from the saved event, from the original event in all cases. So again, back to the list. And this is just a demo. It's sitting in the buffer. It's what you can do. You can be actively working on multiple events if you want to. That's just fine. So, and then the other people, we can't really, since we have no, in this particular club, I have no current sanctions, but we can go to a club, we'll do that. I'll do one of those for you. And then I can resurrect an a YRE, and right now our renewal period is not active. So I can't demonstrate that, but that's where your renewals will appear. And the other feature that's been added to this page is the ability to move an event to a different club. When clubs unfortunately go under, often we want to move the events from that club to the other, and there's a procedure, and I don't propose to go through that today, but it's pretty obvious to do. You got to select the event and then get permission, and it tells you how to do that from the recipient club. You enter that code, and then you submit that code, basically. There's a procedure. It talks about it here. I don't want to go through that right now. But all this is a demo. I guess what I'm going to do is go ahead and delete.
Mike, can you show us what the state association might see if there was one? We have a question that wondering what the state association is going to see when it comes time for them to approve it.
Sure, they're going to see the same thing as the RD, and what I will show the RD page here. So I'm going to go back to her account, and I'm going to go into the RD display. Notice now he gets a notification that he's got approvals pending. And this is the same thing that will appear on the state association account, the exact indication. They can hit go here, or they can click on the approvals. I'm just going to click on approvals, and it shows that it's ready to be reviewed. Click on review, look it over. Maybe say, I don't like it. Maybe there's a message capability that you can use where you can send a message to somebody about, geez, you know, I thought you'd have more information here. And it would go back to the person that actually entered the event. And when you're done, you would hit, when you're done with that feature, you would say done. Okay. He could choose to approve that event. And I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and approve it because I can clean it out later. So I'm going to approve it. Notice now the same thing appears for a state association. No events here. However, if he does go back, this thing will not clear immediately, but you know, you have nothing to approve, then you know it's okay to drop that. You've taken that action, no big deal. If I go back to my account, notice I got notification that my event has been approved. Nice feature, huh? So I got notification my event's been approved from the Garden State Wanderers. And if I go into Garden State Wanderers and look at their active sanctions where they didn't have one, now they have one. And now we can actually edit that one. We can edit that active sanction and you know, change something about it. Let's change the date. Okay, I'm going to change it just a little bit. I'm going to change it to August 7th. And I'm going to save review that. Notice I have to still request approval for a date change. So now it's still RD pending because I changed the date. RD approval changing. So that's what happens when I change the date. So let me go again and approve that in the RD interface. And again, he sees something that needs to be approved. He does the review and he asks, well, what changed? And guess what? He gets a change bar. This is all that's changed in that event, right? A nice little thing for convenience for the RD. He can see that this is the only thing that's changed. Everything else that I approved is in place. So he should be ready to approve it or not. Maybe that now interferes. He may have to go back and forth a little bit, but we're going to approve that. And again, I'm going to go back to the Garden State notice. Now I got two approvals that I'm just going to get rid of because I approved once originally and once when I went back to it. So now I'm going to go back and change something that does not require. So now I'm going to edit this event, but now I'm going to change something that doesn't require approval, like a trail rating. And I'm going to change the trail rating to a 3B for some reason. And notice this is maybe it throws some people off, which is, if you remember, I entered like a 2B down here and a 2B here. I'm going to put this back to 2B. Okay, now that's all I changed about this thing. I'm going to add a 7K just for the heck of it. And it's going to be a 1A. So that's a change. When I do a save review now, it's just a trail rating. So I don't have to get that approved. I just hit publish and it'll become publicly available. I also get to see what I changed between on that last editing session. And notice how it appears. I have a 5 at 1A, a 7 at 1A, and a 10 that's the default rating at 2B. Okay. If notice also the way this appears here, when that comes in, even though I set this to 2B, it recognized that it matched that basic level. So this is blanked out, and that can be a bit disconcerting, but it's not that bad, right? It basically, don't worry, it's doing the right thing. And it's just that when this matches that, it says there's no reason to have that reading there, because that by default is going to pick up the 2B rating. It kept the two 1As, it reordered the events by distance, and that's how that's done. So as soon as I go back to save review, and now I hit publish, has been published and it's no longer on the edit list. So sure enough, my edit list is gone and my new sanction has these new trail ratings. That's available to the public right now. No 30-day limit, no 30-day, it's got to sync to the system or anything, right? That's the wonders of why we wanted to get all this onto the new server.
Mike, could we stop for a moment?
Sure,
and just,
let's talk
take
some questions. Absolutely.
Questions. All right, where do you put the quote PPSF? So the RD
Yes.
and the
Yes, very good. No problem. So let's go back and let's go to sanctions, edit. So this is an approved event. And notice there is no PPSF that you can select. It's approved. And that's because it's already been approved. And so the only way to change that now is to contact the headquarters. But if you submit the event ahead of time, so let's create a new event. Right here, new event, or even copy it. And as soon as I select traditional, a walk or something, 2022 for, oh no, I'm sorry, it's got to be a year round, sorry. And by default, it thinks you're going to go to 2023. If you choose seasonal, it's going to say, well, you better, you're only going to be able to select from now forward in principle. It's not really working like it should. There we go. Even on 2022, it should change. It doesn't allow you to, there we go. Click on 2022. It changes it to a seasonal because we're not going to let you declare an event starting any later than today or the next day. And down here at the bottom is where you request PPSF. Okay. Does that answer the question? And then of course you have to fill out all the information. But if you want it to be PPS after it's approved, there's a chance that the event has already been billed. And that's why you got to contact headquarters. They have the ability to change an event to PPSF and adjust the billing, right? You shouldn't be sanctioned. You shouldn't get a billing for sanctioning the initial $30 or $20, depending on the event type. Does that answer the question?
It does. Next question, what is the message button? Somebody asked about the message button. So
okay. The message button was on the, I don't think you can send a message to the, I haven't used the message. Oh yeah, here it is. Click on the message button. This is how you send something to the RDs. See, so if you say share with both, sure. If it likes that or not, who knows? And then I can say done. And there are messages out there. You can see that you can clear that message. Oh, I didn't say add that. Sorry. I got to add that message first. Now it's there. And now I'm done. Sorry, I haven't done this, obviously. But you can see it's when I sent it out. And guess what? If I go to the RD account, message. Okay. We're also going to be add a feature that will actually asynchronously notify RD when it gets a new message, but that's not quite there yet. But that's how the messaging works.
All right, a comment from Chris that should mention buffer can be reviewed and edited by others. I'll let you.
Yes, what Chris Zeglin is pointing out is that as I go to Garden State Wonders, anybody that has management privileges for Garden State can edit that. So you say, well, gee, I need, in order to really proceed with this event, it's already been approved, but on, say on a new event, someone else can come in and say, well, yeah, gee, I know the special programs. And so I can add the fact that it's got a carousel and rails to trails and other things going on, probably goes by a veterans memorial, and put it in the save. So anybody can work on this event as long as they have the management privileges for the club. And just to remind people, we do tell people how to get management privileges for a club. You just go into find a tutorial. When it comes back, there we go. Club management and how to set up management privileges. And click on that, and there's a step-by-step procedure that you have to do. But requires both the person who's wants to be a club manager do something, then first of all, they got to have a user account, and then there has to be an action by an existing manager, or if you're the first manager, the AVA national office.
Does the 60-day window change based on the kind of event? So if somebody has a traveling guided walk, is that?
Yes, that 60-day window is, I don't know if Chris may be able to, I haven't actually tested that out per se, but I would hope for your second traveling guided walk, you would not even get a warning about the 60-day window, because the window is all about trying to assure that using standard monthly stamp production, that you will get a stamp in time, that there's no extra effort required by the headquarters to get you a stamp in time. And that's not an issue for traveling, the second and later traveling guided walks by a club, since they get their stamp on the first walk. And so hopefully that answers the question. Can't say whether, I haven't tried it out enough. Maybe Chris can say whether they get at an event a warning message for the second traveling guided walk or not. Even if you do, you know it's okay, because you say, gee, I already got my stamp ordered and in place because I've got my first traveling guided walk going.
How about local programs? Do they show up under special programs?
No, they do not. No, they do not. And they probably will never. Because the part of the magic of AVA special programs is they are national, and clubs who are sponsoring them have paid $300 for this privilege. So that has to mean something. And I can't imagine putting local programs as a option on to be on that edit list. So again, the ideas would so I'm in a different world here. Let's go to this one. This is now Libertyville Wanderers, and let's say, so the question is, do I want to allow additional programs to be listed here? And my recommendation would be not so. There's no concept of displaying local programs. It was just a nice feature that was added to the online start box, so people could easily get insert cards for their local programs. Of course, now with the cut and paste feature, the necessity for that's kind of nil anyway. If you want additional stamps for your system, you just copy one of the insert cards generated on the online start box and cut that image out and paste it into your local book.
Okay. What is the process if a year-round has been PPSF currently, but changing to standard for renewal next year?
You will have the option.
This is Chris. Are you able to hear me finally? Okay. I can answer that. That basically, during the renewal process, you will be able to go in and edit any of your events and change the PPSF request. And so you can just unclick it and it will no longer be PPSF for the subsequent year.
I really failed to do something at the beginning of this. I need to point out that Chris Zeglin, who just spoke to you, is the primary author of all this new functionality, an immense amount of code. I am very experienced with coding, and Chris has done yeoman work here, getting all this to work properly, and helped to work together to get as many bugs out as we could. And it's in, I think, usable shape for the clubs as it now stands. We may find more bugs as we go along, but it's basically working and working well. And again, thanks to the magnificent, diligent efforts of Chris Zeglin.
Yeah, the page that you're looking at is 300,000 characters of code. So to suggest that it is exactly 100% correct is just not reasonable. So we will find some issues with it out of that immense amount of typing, and we'll fix them as fast as we can as we find them. But we're not finding very many as we go on through some of these demos and so on. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Yep, it's been pretty clean. We've found a few bugs in the last week when we had things shut down, but that was pretty clean for the most part. And we've gotten a lot of the major things fixed, and it's in good shape. So here you see I'm editing a current event, and notice I can't change the stamp's already locked because that stamp's been produced. So you can't change that, but I could say, oh geez, you know, I want to add a little free library to that walk or something, right? And then save it and publish it. And I could do that here on this event that's yet to come. It's a event in the future in April 30th, actually.
Yeah. One other thing that I would mention, and possibly earlier, notice that this is a traditional event, and the items in the traditional event, a PPSF, a hosting of the start box and so on, is not something that you need for a traditional event. You've got a start table always. You never have a start box for a traditional event. So what you see is that the items that are requested are linked to specific things like you want a traditional event. You can see that the form changes depending on what you actually select in the thing. If you go into here, click traditional. Mike?
Yeah, I did.
Click traditional?
Yes, traditional has been clicked. You should be seeing it.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, jeepers, too bad.
Oh, okay.
So traditional has been clicked and you see some selection. If you go to a year round, you see a
Right.
different selection. You can actually select it whether it's going to be a online start box, a physical both, and you got the PPSF option.
Yeah.
That's only available
So
for year rounds.
click on the year round now, so we can
Yes.
just see the difference.
So the year round has been clicked on.
Okay. It's got to download the image to the computer.
Yep.
But what you can see is that there's this, still hasn't come through.
It's been
That's
done on
odd.
my end. Sorry if
There we
everyone's
are. Now
been experiencing this delay, but yes.
Yeah. So if you go down, you'd notice here there's, you now select physical start box, online start box, or both. And that's a required item here to tell the system what to expect down the road. And again, you see the PPSF, but that disappears on a traditional event. You can't do PPSF on a traditional event. So we've tried to lock this. Back on the event dates, notice that you've only got 2022, 2023 for year rounds and seasonals, whereas a traditional event, because of conventions and things like this, you have up to 2 years in advance, which means it's 2024 is possible. But if you click on 2024, you'll find that the start date is limited to, you can't just go all the way out on the start date. So
the other feature is that as soon as you click on traveling guided, you can only get do so many things here. Shouldn't be. Yeah, if you click on swim, the option for traveling guided goes away. We only support the concept of bike and walks for traveling guided.
That's correct. So things like this. So the general idea here is that people who really know how to fill out sanctions, there's a lot of verbiage here that you don't need to read. You understand very quickly what needs to happen. This is designed for people who do one sanction a year. They'll go back in a year later to try and do this, and they won't remember squat. Hopefully, there's enough verbiage here, leads them through the process, that they can actually complete a sanction with the help and other things in this design, because otherwise it's pushing this complexity back onto the same people who know how to do it all the time. We need to get more people feeling comfortable with creating sanctions, and hopefully this design will help them do that.
Mike, we have a couple of questions about the kinds of events. People are going ice skate, what? Kayak? What's
Yes.
that about?
Well, we've always supported kayaking and ice skating and snowshoe and cross-country ski. It's just no one sanctioned the events.
Okay, and how about
We had
can
a
they be traveling?
kayak.
Can they be traveling?
Excuse me. What's the question?
Could they be I mean, someone was asking about snowshoe
Right
traveling
now,
guided.
right now, there is no, I don't know what there's a sanctioning fee associated with traveling guided walks and bikes, which is different from the standard fee. For a traveling guided walk, the sanction fee is $75 because you are allowed to do multiple walks after that with no sanctioning fee. For a bike event, the sanctioning fee is $30. But if you don't have it, if you have just a guided bike or a regular bike walk, it's only $20. And so the problem is, I don't know what to charge for a traveling guided walk. The board has not provided any guidance on that to make a snowshoe event traveling guided. So
changing this would take about 5 minutes once we've got the billing side, and then it's probably couple hours to do the billing side.
No, it's simpler than that. No,
okay.
I'm a half an hour away from fixing the billing side.
Okay, then if the board approves and we come up with a price for traveling snowshoes, it'll be in there.
Yep. Or a traveling swim or a traveling kayak. If that's what the hope is. These traveling walks, yeah, maybe they're neat, but I think that a lot of the neatness of traveling walks is the fact that they're guided. Because for a simple, when you specify a walk as guided, that means you're going to get a stamp for every one of those walks. And that's kind of nice, right? And guided means that to most clubs that they are going to have a minimal time where people are supposed to register. They shut down the registration and then they do the walk. And that's kind of the way guided are held by, and that's the way traveling guided is too, except only one stamp per year. No matter how many guided walks you have, traveling guided walks you have, you only get one stamp, and you get one shot at setting the text on that stamp. You don't get another stamp. If you want another stamp, if you want a different stamp for every event, sanction a regular event, not a traveling guided event, or sanction a regular guided event.
Do you want to show the new stamp layout for like a traveling guided walk?
Okay.
So just you have
to sanction one.
Well, just hit traveling and then go out to stamp.
Okay.
You've got a date. Oh, you don't have, yeah. Okay, and that's it. So copy to stamp.
Yeah.
So the new idea with the traveling stamps is that the number on the right-hand side of the stamp made no sense. It was linked to an event that may or may not actually occur. By putting a T there to indicate it's traveling, we now have enough room to typically put the club's name on the traveling stamp. And the feedback that I got was that that's far, far more interesting than having a stamp that's specifically tied to like a location, a particular city, for example. And as you travel around, you could be traveling around the state.
Yes.
And so putting the club name there seems to make a lot more sense. And so that's a change that's new. And it's really going to apply to any club that's sanctions a new traveling, their first one from here on out will get their stamp. But it really applies for next year on traveling stamps.
And we, the other thing about traveling stamps is this option that we recommend you want to get your stamp as soon as possible. That gives you the most flexibility to be able to say schedule, you know, very promptly later. Maybe you want to say, oh, we really decide to do one of these a little bit earlier than what this one was scheduled for. And so you're allowed to do that. So I recommend clicking off deliver stamp as soon as possible as part of this.
We have several questions about the different kinds of stamps and the different kinds of walks. And I think we should save all those kinds of questions for another. Let's talk about all the different kinds of walks and the products that we have.
I agree, right? We have not
events and all that sort of stuff.
There is no support for ACE events other than ACE weekday guided. And ACE events have been around now for almost 4 years. And the ACE traditional, ACE youth, and ACE private have not been sanctioned. None of those events have been sanctioned in the last 2 years. So at the moment, that is not supported in this move into the new ESR. And the IT committee strongly recommends that we drop those particular type of events. That said, ACE weekday guided, which is something that where you do the event on a weekday and you don't sanction it ahead of time, you just do a report of what occurred on that event, is permissible and it will be supported.
Okay, I wanted to point out something that's on this page. If you look at the special programs there, this event was for 2024. Notice the list is pretty short. The list only allows you to check off valid special programs for the year, the ones that are valid for the year. So as they drop off or they complete, then they come off this list.
And clearly this list would be, when we get new events added to the list, you know, when this thing is finally done in 2024, then that will be added and then they come in and add it here, obviously. As soon as it's officially added to the list, you can add it to your walk, but not before then, since we don't know what that event is, what that special program is.
Yep.
And that's the function of the programs committee, and we can chat about that next time, because we do have a request. We have some requests out there, and I'd sure like to have some suggestions and some clubs stepping up to, because we will have special programs dropping off. We have 3 minutes more or less left. Anything else you want to add, Mike, to kind of summarize this?
Bottom line is this event buffer is a creative area for the club. Nothing goes public until you have published it or submitted it for approval. Use it as a sandbox for ideas in your club. You know, start writing something up, creating a new event, have other people come in and take a look on it, but they got to have the management privileges, but that's not too hard. And they can look at it. Oh, I can add a little bit more information here and there. And the other thing I would like to point out is that you really should try to fill out a lot of the nicer fields here, including the ones that are required. So you're required to put in a county, but you're also, we would really like for you to put in a nice GPS phrase here. And that indicates where you're going. And, you know, for example, I would like to put in, maybe not appropriate for this event, but I can. And you use that to verify its location, and it generates a new tab, and you can see that it found that location very accurately with that information. I tend to also want to come back if it's I like to put the exact address in also. Yeah. So Google has a nice feature where you can copy that. And again, I go back to edit sanction. And again, I like to put in that there, and then I can delete all that. I think it's friendlier because a lot of times Google, even though your Google will find that thing, somebody in California, their Google doesn't know that much about the area. And so what happens is, guess what? It doesn't locate it as well for somebody in California. So it's best to put in the address with this. And of course, you can verify it again that it indeed finds that location based on that, and it should. And now you're ready to save.
Right. I'd like to point out one of the things that is relatively new about that particular feature, and that is that when somebody is looking at the sanction itself, so this is the public sanction, that field, there's a button connected to it. So what it does is it pulls up Google Maps and actually produces the driving directions on Google Maps based on where you happen to be. So if you're doing it on your cell phone, what it will do is give you driving directions from where you actually happen to be. So the driving directions field becomes less important at that point. But it means that somebody who's staying at some hotel and doesn't know how to get to your event, that field gives them the driving directions, and it works on Apple as well, as far as I know, and so on. So,
yeah, here's a particular event in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. So here, that's what that I'm showing here through I did it through Finda. I've searched for Lansdale. It turns out to be nearby, and I can click go, and it's ready. It's now it wakes by default showing it knows kind of where I'm at. It's not too far away from my current location, but there are the driving directions. And, I could make it whatever I want here, right? I could say, Wildwood, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And there's
Mike,
the driving directions from Wildwood, New Jersey.
Yeah. All of this is to help people get to your event. That's the real key behind all this extra information. So you look here at all the driving directions. It's great. It was thorough and it can be helpful, but a little bit difficult to read if there's only one person in the car. You got a phone, and most people do now. You just hit that go, and you've got driving directions from where you happen to be.
Maybe our driving directions should evolve a little bit to give you that last little bit of information about, okay, I got to where Google got me. Now tell me where in that building, or what desk, or do I always have to go up to the clerk and say, please get me the walk box, or is it located under a particular chair somewhere? That type of information should be more what this is about, the address and how do I get there once Google has got me to the general location. That's what this should become.
Yeah, and so clubs can start making choices about how they get people to their events.
Yep.
Mike, Chris, and others, thank you so very much for taking the time to share with us. We've kind of come to the end of our hour here, and if there are any other questions, I think Mike would be amenable to taking email questions offline. And
yes,
this session will be recorded and put into our YouTube page, and of course the links always appear on our social media sites, and we're going to send that link off to Hector to make sure it's in the next checkpoint as well, and it'll be there for your use permanently as a training aid, and for you to review as we come to the end of the year and time to renew next year's events.
Yes. One more thing, you can always, you decided, well, I'm working on an event. You can always delete it from the buffer. This is, a bogus event. I didn't want it. Let's say I want to abandon any editing here. It's not a delete, it's a resend. So I basically, anything that I've changed, I don't want to apply it to the current event because I'm editing a current sanction. Just hit the resend, confirm. So all my changes are been abandoned, and whatever I changed now is gone. Now I'm back to here. That's where my event is. And soon this event will be deleted, by the way, since it's not really an event. So have a good evening, everybody. And please also, you can feel free to contact me. Also, we have osbhelp@ava.org. Daryl Neely will be glad to answer questions, not only about the online start box, but about helping people with this. And, we're Daryl. I'm always supporting, and so is Chris, always supporting Daryl if he can't answer one of your questions. And I'm sure people will be finding bugs, and we'll work on them as we find them. Okay.
Thank you all very much, and the recording is now stopped.